mypags.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email. It's all right there. Also, Newsmax TV. Glad to have you along for the ride. Really glad to have back Gregory Wrightstone. He is an author and an expert when it comes to climate change, so-called global warming. I had to have you back on, Greg. First of all, how are you? You good?
Oh, really good, really good. A little bit angry right now, but
I hear you.
We'll get into that.
And I think that if we get really angry, people will believe us. I think that's the tactic of the left. So we'll try that in a second. The name of the book is Inconvenient Facts. And people oftentimes, I want to start here, and I always do with you, they oftentimes say, Pags, I believe you. I think you're right. I think it's a hoax. I think that it's being blown out of proportion. I think this is about power and control and carbon footprints and taxing us through the nose and everything else. But I just don't have a good resource I can throw in my uncle's face to say, here are the facts. You have the resource. You wrote it.
Yeah. There's, and that's why it was called Inconvenient Facts. There were 60 of these really interesting and facts that just blow away their main arguments of catastrophic man-made warming. But you're right. And then along with that's the app that we created that, of course, Apple took down. So, well, thank you. We'd like to get it out. We're actually talking about turning it into a textbook for homeschoolers.
Great.
That's on the list of things to do.
Yeah, you mean they're not going to put it in public schools where they're showing inconvenient truth as facts?
Actually, the reason I'm angry, just before I got on here and talk with you, I got an email from my local library.
Yeah.
I had a friend that told me they wanted a book from the library, and the library says we're not carrying it. So I dropped off 3 today. I got an email. We're not going to list it. Come pick them up.
Why?
I'm in their own township. Best-selling author. The book was number 1 in 5 categories within the last month. I'm going to have that conversation with them.
They're afraid of the truth getting out, Greg, and you know this. Get the book. It's Inconvenient Facts, and this is going to be all the knowledge that you need to combat those lefties in your family or your workforce or whatever it is. The people who say that we're just deniers. I always start in a very general sense because I'm not as smart as you are, and you tell me that all the time off the air. But in a very general sense, the fact is, we don't want there to be global warming that's killing people. We don't want dirty air and dirty water and pollution. And the idea that those who are conservative, or even right down the middle, maybe lean right a little bit, somehow want the earth to end in 12 years is stupid. That's dumb, because that would mean all of us die too. So that argument in and of itself is just stupid, isn't it, Greg?
Oh, it is. You and I, we're both conservationists.
Yeah.
We like nature. We want clean water. We want clean air. But we don't. What we're being told are these myths of these apocalypses that are going to happen because of man-made driven warming. And as you know, we've talked a lot of times about. I'm a big proponent of the benefits of warming, and that's what we've seen historically. Look back through over human history. It's 4,000 years of documentation of actually warming being beneficial. It's the cold. I'm worried, Joe, because we've seen in the northern hemisphere over the last few months some really significant cold events. We just had France, a huge snowfall. We've had the coldest April ever recorded in Canada. These things might be telling us something about what's coming up, the looming cooling event, which would be much, 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 much. I could add a few more muches, but much worse than a little bit of warming.
It is Gregory Wrightstone. It's Wrightstone. Greg, am I spelling that right?
You are.
Good, because I want people to make sure that they spell it right when they get Inconvenient Facts. And again, this is a book that will give you the information and the ammunition you need to have these arguments. Bill Nye, the TV science guy, I guess he's an engineer. He's not really a scientist. He's not a climatologist. But I think that he thinks now, and here's a guy that was welcomed into people's homes to teach their children for a long time on television. He went on some late night show. John Oliver's the guy's name. I don't know the guy other than he said that he dared Donald Trump to run for president. He would write him a check, and he never did. Having said all of that, Bill Nye shows up and decides if I say the F word a bunch of times, then people will have to believe me when it comes to global warming or climate change. When you see a guy like Bill Nye, who has a lot of traction because he was, as I said, in the homes of families for a long time, a trusted, fun, scientific guy, now he's out there on the far left. He's gone nuts. He's a lunatic, obviously. He can't control his profane mouth. When you see him out there pushing this garbage and then people clapping for him, what are your thoughts?
I welcomed it, actually, because I think they're losing the argument. Yeah. It was so bad. He dropped the F-bomb, and then he ended it with preceding the F-bomb with mother. And I was shocked. It was it was just so unprofessional. I mean, I don't swear much at all. I'll drop an oh gosh darn or whatever. Not really, but I'm not. It just lessens a person. And I'm with you, Joe. I think these people think that they're losing this argument. They're angry that not everybody's coming on board. And this latest extinction report that came out last week is a case study of why they're driving more people and why people don't believe them.
Well, I want to talk about that specifically because I don't have the knowledge of that extinction study, but I know that you're mad about it, and I want to get into it. It's Gregory Wrightstone. Get his book, Inconvenient Facts. It's going to dispel a lot of the garbage you've been fed about global warming or climate change or whatever. Oddly, they changed it to climate change because nobody can argue the climate doesn't change. Of course it does. So the idea that climate change isn't happening is a dumb idea. Of course it is. But global warming wasn't happening, and global cooling may in fact be happening, as you say. But what is this extinction report? I take it from the notes that I saw that they were suggesting that because of the out-of-control climate caused by humans and our SUVs and cows, there are a bunch of extinct mammals or species that we didn't know about before. Fill me in.
Well, no. They took a look at, there's this called the Red List, IUCN Red List. It catalogs every extinct species since the year 1500. So we've got 500 years of extinction data. They took that, manipulated it. There were only 5 data points. They lumped every 100-year period as one data point and then graphed it. And what they showed was this skyrocketing graph with extinctions just going off the chart. My God. And they predicted that we would have 1 million future extinctions over the next several decades. Well, they didn't define what several decades were, but 1 million extinctions, if it's 40 years, that's 25,000 a year.
Right.
If it's 30 years, it's 30,000 a year. Well, you know how many there were, the average extinction rate per year over the last 40 years?
No.
Two.
Well, there you go. Well,
not 2,000, not 200.
You just said the word several, but if you say several, then you're safe.
Right. But and what I did was I went back and I examined actually the same data they used.
Right.
And I looked at it decade by decade. And what we found was there was this big extinction, spike of extinctions that went on in the late 1800s and the first decades of the 1900s. And that's what drove this. We've been in decline. Extinctions have been significantly declining since the early 1900s. Completely opposite of what this study came out. And
well, of course, I think they came out with sport utility vehicles in 1873, right? Isn't that when? Because the SUVs had to do it, right, Greg? It had to be the cows. Yeah. Cows were really farting a lot in the late 1800s. Come on.
Well, what it turns out was there were a lot of islands, mainly Pacific Islands, Australia, where non-native species were taking over and eating. You introduce a rat that's never been there and eats up all the eggs. So the other thing that's interesting, they said the main driver of extinction was going to be habitat loss. Yep. Okay, Joe, I'm gonna test you here. Okay. So what are they proposing that we should do to solve man-made climate change? What is
they propose we stop using fossil fuels,
right?
And that we stop eating meat and we stop having children.
Okay, let's go a little bit further. So we're going to replace fossil fuels with what? Solar panels.
This is solar energy and wind turbines.
So what they're proposing, they're saying on one hand, they're saying we're going to have a lot of extinctions because of habitat loss. On the other hand, they're saying we need to pave over hundreds of square miles for factories for solar panels, and then construct these huge wind turbines throughout pristine grassland and mountainous areas.
Right, it's ridiculous.
That'll be chewing up endangered species and birds.
But they'll feel better about it. They're going to feel better about it, Greg. Come on, that's what it's all about. It's Gregory Wrightstone. The name of the book is Inconvenient Facts. Let me ask you about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who doesn't know anything about anything. Allegedly has an economics degree, which I don't believe. I'm going to have to see the piece of paper because what she says about the economy just doesn't make any sense. But she said we're all going to be dead in 12 years. Going to be dead in 12 years. And even the people whose study she based that fallacious statement on have said, oh, no, she's misinterpreting it. We didn't say that. And she's even backing away from that. But so many people, I mean, young people who hear her speak because she's young and pretty, think that she's right. What's your answer when she says, you're in a room with her and she says, we're all going to be dead in 12 years and we don't change everything when it comes to climate and do the Green New Deal? Your answer to her is what?
Boy, there's no evidence of it right now. I see an Earth that's thriving and prospering and humanity's benefiting. Right now, all we can see is good things happening right now. Increasing food, increasing cleaner water, cleaner air. The Earth is getting better. Humans are living longer. There's less disease, and we're lifting people up out of generational poverty because of fossil fuels. Yeah. She wants to get rid of all that. So no, and we've seen the same similar predictions over the last 30 years or more of doom that's just on the horizon. And it just hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen.
It's always a few years out, isn't it? It's always a few years out.
And I tell you, it may happen if we go into this next cooling period. That's what scares me, Joe, is the cooling. If we do, it won't be as bad as the previous times because our technology and transportation sectors allow us to move food from one area to another.
Right.
We've advanced beyond ox carts, which was what they had before. But that's what we should be preparing for.
And we're ignoring it. We're ignoring it and pretending that it's the other way. It's Gregory Wrightstone. Inconvenient Facts is the name of the book. Let me ask you this. When I have an argument with somebody about global warming or climate change, the argument I make is that we've had several ice ages. We've had several glaciers covering massive amounts of land on planet Earth. They've always melted. Therefore, it must have gotten hotter. Then they came back, and therefore it got a lot colder. These are cycles, obviously. And the response that I get from these far-left pinheads who just can't get themselves out of their own box, their response is, yeah, but we missed one. We should have had another ice age. And then, of course, my follow-up, Greg, is what you just said. Why do we want another ice age? Why do we all want to die and start all over again? I mean, that's really their argument. What do you say to them?
Yeah, because we've seen, I mean, these colder periods have been just over the last 10,000 years, or the 4,000 years of human history.
Right.
It's been horrific. Famine, pestilence, mass depopulation is what accompanies each cold period, and it's going to be similar, maybe not as bad as before because of the transportation things I mentioned, but it's going to be bad, and I mean, again, I welcome the warming temperatures.
Right. Well, that side seems to want cold temperatures. How do you get through to somebody and say you don't want North America to be a sheet of ice?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try and handle that in my next book that I'm working on now.
Good.
And it's going to be, and that's what we need to do is, for example, the medieval warm period back in the around 800 and 1200 AD, the high Middle Ages.
It was caused by automobiles, by the way. Go ahead.
And funny as we see glaciers, you can go up to the Mendenhall Glacier in Alaska, and you can look now where it's receding because we've had some warming. We can see old, mature trees and forest, the remains of their root systems that are now being exposed. So we had this mature forest back in the medieval warm period. Well, it had to have been warmer then. Now it's just the glaciers are just receding back, catching up to where the warmth was then. I mean, for crying out loud, in the Roman warm period, the Romans up at Hadrian's Wall in the north of England were growing citrus up there. You can't grow citrus anywhere near there now. So, of course, it was a lot warmer.
I'm pretty sure they had Hummer H2s, though, in the Roman Empire, and that's probably what caused a lot of that warming. Greg, I'm being facetious, obviously, but I love your knowledge. I love the book. I have several copies that I've handed out to people. Inconvenient Facts, Gregory Wrightstone. When you get closer to having that book about what's happening next in the cooling period, let's get together again. Let's do that.
All right, man.
Always appreciate you. Gregory Wrightstone, get his book, Inconvenient Facts. We're back after this in the Joe Pags Show. Stay right here.